afternoon and welcome to another episode of This Week in Plymouth. I'm your host, Derek Brindisi, and your town manager. This afternoon we have two special guests with us, Reil and Patrick Farah, both working here at Town Hall, doing a lot of work around climate resiliency and sustainability. So Mark, I know you were recently, I think this past summer, you were on with me to introduce yourself to the community. And Patrick, you've been with the town for many years as well. I'm sure you've been on these types of shows in the past. So just to reintroduce yourselves to the community, Mark, I'll start with you. Just give a little bit of background, what you do for the town.
Sure. So I was hired here in Plymouth in July of 2022. I previously worked for the state senate, and from there I went on to be the director of legislative affairs for the Department of Fish and Game, where I've learned a lot about the impacts of climate change coupled with policy. And so this role here really works well for me and for the town, and I've been able to really bring some really great experience here, and I look forward to continuing to assist the town in these areas.
And you've already, working with Patrick and others you guys have already started to set a roadmap for some of the work around climate resiliency. And Patrick, a longtime veteran here in town. You want to introduce yourself to the folks at home?
Well, thank you. Yes, my name is Patrick Farah, and I have been with the town for over 16 years. I have three positions. I'm one of the planners, the energy officer, as well as one of the conservation agents. So I have a full plate, but we're doing a lot of important things. And I want to keep the momentum going. When Mark came over the summer, I admit I breathed a sigh of relief because bringing someone new to the table is always refreshing. So,
yeah, that's helpful. And I'm sure with everything that you have, you wear many hats, Patrick, and having someone like Mark kind of jump in to assist with some of that climate resiliency work, I'm sure took a little bit of a burden off your day-to-day work too.
Absolutely.
And Rich Vaca too does a lot of this work as well, and he's not here with us today. But
yes.
So Patrick, so I've been here almost a year, and Mark, you started July, I think, of 22, somewhere in that time period. So before Mark and I both got here, you guys were already doing some work around EV charging stations, and now we're introducing EV vehicles into the fleet. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So back in around 2003, I secured a grant with the Office of Community Development for a single EV charging station. It was a two-port.
Just so folks are aware.
Electric vehicle.
Electric vehicle.
Electric vehicle charging station. It's a level 2, so it's a little bit. It's about 2 or 3 times more than just plugging into your regular household outlet.
Okay.
It's a 220 outlet, like your dryer type outlet. And we secured a grant to install one unit, and we didn't have a lot of expectations. And what happened was, the first year, I think we had like over 150 charging sessions, which greatly exceeded.
And this is 2003?
This is back in 2003 through 2004.
So 20 years ago, you guys started this program.
Yeah. Okay. So, excuse me, I take that back. It was 2013. I'm sorry.
10 years ago.
It was 11 years ago, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't here in 2003. Anyway, what happened was the program, the pilot was so successful, I went back to the Office of Community Development and I said, why don't we go ahead and come up with a program to entice EV drivers, electric vehicle drivers, to make Plymouth a destination. And we then installed 6 more units. So we had 7 units. And we are up to 10 units now, with 11th coming online. It was actually a relocation down in Manomet. And we're averaging between 500 and 600 charging sessions a month. So, and the original premise for this program was to bring people in from out of town. A lot of people use Plymouth as a rest stop on their way down to the Cape. And we wanted them to actually spend a little bit more time. It's funny, probably about maybe like 3-4 years ago, right before the COVID pandemic, I met a couple. They were, I believe, from Michigan, and they drove down to Plymouth. On the way to Cape Cod, they fell in love with Plymouth. They moved here.
Because they stopped.
Because they stopped and they saw how beautiful the town was. And I was
Right.
like, okay, this program is really working. This is exactly what we're doing. And we have people coming from the West Coast, from Alaska, Anchorage, Florida, and all the states in between. Just about every state in the union has come to Plymouth at one time or another during the course of a year.
And so, again, just to recap, you're saying back in 2013, you had 150 charging
Sessions.
per year,
For the first year, yes.
and now you're up to 600 per month.
Correct.
Wow, so that speaks to its success.
Absolutely.
And I want to talk a little bit about the town's pursuit of EV vehicles, electric vehicles. But on top of that, staying on the charging, we have 2 charging stations, right, at Town Hall in the back parking lot?
We have a single unit that's 2 ports.
2 ports.
And Mark has, in fact, Mark, if you want to talk about what you've done in the last few months.
Yeah, so
That'd be great.
we're in the process of adding an additional 2 more units that are both dual ports. So there'll be eventually 6
6,
charging
okay, I didn't realize that.
plugs up there on the Cornish parking lot. And what we've done since July is worked with the select board to secure ARPA funds to purchase up to 5 electric vehicles. And so that was one of the goals of the select board this year, was to incorporate electric vehicles into the town fleet. This effort really works to reduce costs for the town in fuel, gasoline especially. And we've been able to secure grant funds to subsidize the costs of these vehicles, $7,500 per vehicle. So currently we have 1 Ford Lightning and 2 Chevy Bolts, with another one coming very soon and a 4th one on order. So we've made some really good advancements on EV integration, and staff have really enjoyed using them, and so we look forward to continuing that.
And Mark, not to put you on the spot, but the conversations that we had at staff meetings every Tuesday around electric vehicles, and obviously it has a positive impact on the environment, but it also has a financial impact as well. So you just talked about these rebates we get, which from what I understand offsets the higher costs of an electric vehicle by getting those rebates, but also we have a financial savings in that we're not using as much gas and the costs associated with gas and just the general maintenance. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So beyond just the fuel use, you have the general maintenance of oil changes over years. And so these vehicles have a lot of potential to drive down costs over a long period of time for the town. And I think past practice a lot of times in many towns was to reuse old gasoline vehicles, maybe from the police department, and implement them into the fleet that are used for general use, such as inspectional services. But the reality is it's really not a best practice. And you see those old vehicles being reused, you're having higher costs on maintenance. So this direction is really the direction of the future, and I see Plymouth being a leader in this direction, and we have an opportunity to show the South Shore that we can be very successful in this.
Well, I do know after we rolled out the first series of vehicles, there was a social media post of one of our town officials who had gone to do an inspection at somebody's home, and the family was so excited that we were using electric vehicles that they ended up taking a picture and posting it on Facebook. So we're already getting a lot of strong positive feedback. And then speaking to one of our officials today, we had a snow event, and he praised how well that vehicle handled the snow, and said it had no problems at all. So again, these vehicles seem like they're positive in many respects, and there's really no negative drawback from them at this point.
Right.
So switching gears just a little bit here, We have a Green Communities Designation. I think we just announced that about 6 or 7 weeks ago. Patrick, you started the Green Communities program, and I know towards the tail end, Mark was able to jump in and kind of assist those efforts. So do you want to kind of kick us off, talking about the Green Communities Designation and what that means to the town?
My predecessor, Patrick O'Brien, actually helped start with the original Energy Committee in looking at the Green Communities Designation when it first came on board through the state. And this was around 2009, end of 2009, early 2010. And I asked to be a part of that whole kind of push to look at this. And we went to town meeting back in 2011, and it died a horrible death. And the reason was adoption of the stretch code. And what the stretch code is basically it's a specialized building code that's a little more stringent to allow builders, or to make builders kind of build what they say they're supposed to build and have someone check their work through a HERS rater. What happened over 10 years ago was that it wasn't just new construction, it was also for additions. And the state has since removed that, the additions, and it would be just for new construction. And I think that easing of that legislation kind of helped a lot of towns and municipalities push through the stretch code, adopting that stretch code. It was a long last couple of years going through the process of applying again. We had a lot of issues with accountability with data. And the one good thing I have to say to anyone who's listening, if you are in a town that does not have Green Communities Designation and you want to look for that, this is a great opportunity to get your inventory, your vehicle inventory under control, and have all your building inventory and all your energy usage in line, so that you know exactly what the town or what the municipality is spending on fuel and all that. And it was a great exercise. It was painful at times, but what we have now that we're designated, we went through all that process. We're in a much better position if we are asked to come up with a certain segment of data, depending on any number of the many town vehicles, buildings that we have on usage. So it does work in our favor to be more organized with data collection. So now we're designated. I think the announcement came out at the end of December, and we received this grant for $270,000. Mark and I, along with several other people in a working group, we've created a working group to look at projects that we could use that grant money for. Some nice low-hanging fruit, or maybe some things that normally would not be able to get some funding for. So we're working with our consultant, Guardian Energy, in coming up with a few projects. And we hope to have to submit our application to the state probably within the next 5-6 weeks or so.
So some of these projects that you just referenced, we would then go ahead and submit a grant application to the state so they would fund these projects.
Right.
So the designation of green communities, to me, from what I just heard, it sounds like it gives us the opportunity to go after state grant funds in order to bring those projects together.
Right. We would now be in a competitive grant pool, so
Gotcha.
to speak,
Okay.
after this designation of $270,000.
Gotcha.
Right, so the designation grant is a given, essentially, and then the subsequent rounds are competitive, so that's where we have to be particular about rate of
what
return
projects
and
we
all of that.
apply for.
Right.
And are you working with any specific committee, board that's helping guide some of these project ideas?
Well, the Energy Committee has been really involved with getting the designation.
Okay.
At this point, we've created this small working group of really just staff to just work through with the consultant, selecting the best projects to move forward. So although the Energy Committee has been involved in the designation process, there's more of an updating situation going on with
Yeah,
with
so
them
we
now.
have the facilities manager for the municipality, we have the facilities manager for the schools,
Gotcha.
a member of the Energy Committee, and then both of us.
Right. Okay. So a well-rounded group of
Right.
Yes.
Everyone has a
diverse-
say of where
Right.
that money, where they want that money to go.
in the projects.
Right.
And then and a grant writer, and we have Tiffany Park, who's the town's grant writer. I think can really help us kind of move a lot of these grants. At the state level, probably a little bit more efficient than we could have prior to her arrival. So we appreciate her efforts. So we're a little more than halfway through today's segment, but let's talk a little bit about this climate resiliency plan. And I think, Mark, we talked a little bit about this proposal with the select board last night because you were seeking ARPA funds, correct, last night through the board in order to fund this project, correct?
Yes, so the Climate Action Plan is a document that is really going to be critical to guiding the town as we adapt to and mitigate the effects of climate change. And so it's more than just a plan that is utilized by town government, but it's actually more of a plan that's used by the community as a whole. And so ideally you want this product to be able to be read easily and understood easily by every citizen in your community so that they understand the direction that we are all going and what they can do as individuals to make advancements in climate resiliency, as well as what other folks and organizations are doing in that direction. So last evening, the select board approved funding for this plan, and ultimately it's really an essential function of my job is to develop and implement one of these plans. And so I'm really looking forward to having this process begin. And when the plan is completed, it really will be the beginning of a long-term process. So it's very exciting.
And I understand that some communities they go big on their first climate action plan, but having talked to you, I think we're going to take a kind of a slow and steady approach. Kind of develop maybe a 2 or 3 year plan first, and then build upon that. Is that true?
Yeah, this will look long term.
Okay.
But what is going to be a little bit different with this plan is it's really called a climate action roadmap, and so
Okay.
it gives it's less about the what is going on and more about the how we're going to tackle those issues. The state has done an extensive amount of work, as well as other communities, on identifying what's happening, and so there's no need to get into the depth of that. In the past, there wasn't a lot of that information, and so communities were doing some longer plans that were really going in depth of the what and the how.
Okay.
So this will be more pared down, but because of that data that's already in existence from the state government and other communities. And that will make it be a more useful document.
And obviously, climate resiliency is important to every community in the nation. But to me, having grown up in Central Mass, being a coastal community, I really feel like it's more important. Sea level rise and things of that nature. Are you aware of any other coastal communities in Massachusetts that already have developed a climate action plan? The reason why I asked that question, where I'm going with that, is, as you know, our new lieutenant governor was the former mayor of Salem, and she had visited the town of Plymouth back in early November, late October time period, and we had a great conversation about taking Plymouth to the next level. So I'm really interested in what they've done in other coastal communities, and could that be used as a model to town of Plymouth?
Definitely. Salem and Beverly did a joint climate action plan. Obviously, the city of Boston has a climate action plan. The Cape Cod Commission did a climate action plan for the entire Cape. The
really?
Vineyard has one. Hingham is looking at doing one right now. So many of the communities along the coast have done that already. And so I think Plymouth has unique features and some differences from those communities just because of its sheer size. And the issues are very broad when it comes to, you have the coastal issues, but there is so many inland issues with flooding and all of the freshwater features as well. So it really does make Plymouth a unique community, and that's why having our own climate action plan, I think, is really important.
Good. And, speaking of boards and committees, I know you work closely with CANS. Can you explain a little bit about what the work that they're doing, that committee?
Sure. So the CANS committee was established, I believe, in early 2022, before I was here. And they've really been working hard to review existing climate action plans that have been established across the Commonwealth and familiarize themselves with the process. And so I really see the CANS committee and myself working in partnership to develop this climate action plan with a consultant and to engage the community, because community engagement is going to be really critical to having a successful climate action plan. And then once that plan is developed and the action items are in place, the CANS committee will be able to work with me to get those things done. And so I really see them as a valuable resource to the town.
Great. So I know we have one other big item that comes up, and it's been a program that has, it started 6-7 years ago in Massachusetts, the MVP program. And again, another program that's led by the state that provides resources to municipalities to focus on some of our climate vulnerabilities. Can Patrick, you or Mark talk a little bit about the MVP
Yeah, Mark
program?
actually has been involved with that.
Yeah, so the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Program is administered by the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs. And Plymouth is an MVP community, and they went through the planning process in 2019 and developed a plan called the Climate Ready Healthy Plymouth Plan that outlines some of the vulnerabilities in the community. And that plan helps to advise into the next phase, which is the MVP action phase. And there's an action grant process. And before I arrived here, Plymouth had received funding for 2 years to study potential impacts of saltwater intrusion into the freshwater aquifer, and see what, if any, impacts there would be. And I know that plan is being wrapped up now. The study is being wrapped up. And so now we are looking to apply again for action grant funds in early spring. We were able to submit expression of interests for 2 projects, which are essentially submitting a rough draft of ideas for projects. So we've submitted the Bartlett Road Bridge project. So it's the bridge, culvert, and stormwater management improvements. And then we also looked at heat island effect mitigation. So through tree plantings, and we're going to look at piloting a cool surface for one of the town parking lots to mitigate some of the heat island effect in North Plymouth, which was identified in the plan done in 2019. So there's a lot of funds available there, and this process of being able to receive feedback from MVP staff, I think, is really valuable, so that we are on track to receiving grant funds once the application period opens.
So for some of us novices, you talked about MVP, grant opportunities, and some of the projects that could be involved in that. You talked about Green Communities, grant opportunities, and the projects involved. From where I sit, it seems like there's a lot of overlap, or are there differences?
I think there's some big differences between the Green Communities projects and the MVP projects, because Green Communities really looks at your energy consumption and your greenhouse gas emissions, whereas MVP is more about on-the-ground situations, such as, say you have an area of town where there's some excessive flooding going on due to extreme weather events. You can target a solution there, and MVP could help fund that solution. Green Communities is more of a built environment. addressing HVAC
for the
issues.
municipality,
Right.
not so much for the residents. The MVP would concentrate on the community as a whole. And if I could just interject
Please.
real quick, I'm also support staff to the Open Space Committee. And the Open Space Committee, for long before I was involved, have looked at properties, pieces of land, open space, whether they're large or even really small, and looked at taking them through town meeting, for instance, like tax title properties, which are basically foreclosed properties, and going to town meeting, have them conveyed under the care and custody of the Conservation Commission as protected open space. Now, a lot of people say, well, why do you want to look at this quarter acre or half acre lot or something? If you take a look at certain areas in Plymouth, North Plymouth, where it's like highly dense, if you have a small green pocket, like a pocket park, we could call it, it not only helps with the biodiversity of that area, but it also helps the residents that live in that area to enjoy some nature on their way to work, or if they're walking their dog, or whatever they're doing. And having a lot of these green spaces throughout the town actually helps promote health and well-being. So we have the MVP, we have the Open Space Committee doing a lot of work. The Open Space Committee has protected hundreds and hundreds of acres over the last, let's say, 10, 12 years that I've been supporting them. So it all, and Mark's right, there are separate things, but they are all integrated together, because we're trying to help Plymouth become, we want to balance the work life,
Right.
as well as development and preservation. Let's save what's left, build responsibly, and have happier, healthier population.
No, and that's a great point. The Open Space Committee does a lot of great work, and one thing I can appreciate between my last community in Plymouth is both heavily invested in open space, right? Especially using CPC dollars, and so both have state forests, both green communities. So there's a lot of parallels between Upton and Plymouth, and you're right. I mean, we have to make sure that we take care of the environment, because our generations, our grandchildren, they need that. They're gonna need that for years to come, especially when it comes to water. But Patrick, we're running low on time, but I'm going to give you 30 seconds to do a PSA on municipal aggregation.
On municipal aggregation, sure.
Just so folks are aware, because we just talked about it a little bit, just so
Yes.
folks are aware what municipal aggregation is. But again, if you could do 30 seconds on that.
All right, I'll try. All right, so if everyone looks at their electric bills, you can see that as of January, the supply side went up 43%. Plymouth has a program in place. It's a 3-year contract. It expires October 1st, where instead of paying the 26.5 cents per kilowatt hour, you pay 9.8 cents per kilowatt hour. The company's name is Dynegy, and the number is 866-220-5696. And if you have any questions, you can reach me directly at 508-322-3374. That's my direct line.
Thank you. And a complicated program, but it's a benefit to the community.
Absolutely.
And they don't have to do anything but stay in the program. If
Correct.
they don't want to be a part of it, they have to opt out. So that was a great opportunity to just tell folks what that is.
you.
So I appreciate you both being here this afternoon. We could probably talk for another hour or two if we had to about
Definitely.
climate action and green communities. So thank you all for attending this afternoon. I'll see you all in a couple weeks. If you want any more information, please go to our website at www.plymouth-ma.gov. Thank you.